Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Flick. I'm the Associate Marine Extension Director with the University of Georgia's Marine Extension and Georgia Sea Grant Program. I'm going to provide an overview of a pilot project that my colleagues and I are working on dealing with ropeless gear systems and black sea bass pots in the South Atlantic. So my collaborators on this is Kim Sawicki, who I'm sure many of you know, who's our lead researcher with the ropeless systems, as well as Charlie Phillips, who's a commercial fisherman and seafood dealer in Townsend, Georgia. One thing I do want to mention right off the bat, this is actually a self-funded pilot project. So all of our partners have contributed countless hours for staff time, as well as providing boat time and the countless resources we've used. Also, donors have played a huge role in this. So I do think that's worth mentioning for this project. A little background, if you're not familiar with black sea bass fishery in the South Atlantic, very popular species for both commercial and recreation. But within the commercial sector, it's broken up in hook and line and pot fishery. Number of regulations, and really what these regs are meant for is trying to prevent undersized bycatch, reduce ghost fishing, prevent derby style types of fishing, and also with some of the regulations, reduce entanglement issues with large whales, particularly the North Atlantic right whale. And one of the regulations is actual seasonal bass pot prohibition, especially in the South Atlantic. As I'm sure many of you know, North Atlantic right whales come down to calve in our winter months. But this has also been, brought up some concerns from the fishing industry that a lot of the areas where they end up not being able to fish are some of the prime spots. And so there are concerns about safety and having to go out further, particularly in Georgia. And since fishermen are not allowed to keep their gear out there, they do have to bring it back. So some socioeconomic concerns from the industry, but yet at the same time, making sure that we're trying to protect right whales. However, this is an opportunity. I mean, with the use of the ropeless systems, we know that this is an opportunity to potentially eliminate all entanglement risk while potentially allowing fishermen to continue fishing. We recognize that for this to happen, there needs to be more detailed assessments happening that might additionally lead to further research and regulatory changes. So we recognize we have to start somewhere, and that's what this pilot project's doing. And so ultimately, yeah, we are trying to look at the potential usefulness of these ropeless gear systems in our black sea pot fishery, while ultimately trying to make the conservation goals for right whales. And you can see a number of research questions dealing with the efficacy and efficiency of both the gear, deployments, retrieval, as well as our time. These are things that we want to continue looking at as we refine this process. And also looking at how the traps themselves in the fishery, fishermen are not allowed to use trawls. So one of the things we're going to look at is an experimental design of using the traps. We are working with a number of manufacturers, gear manufacturers. So you can see here from left to right, Field Buoy, Field Marine, Field Buoy, Desert Star Systems, Subsea Sonic. In fact, we've got two models from them, Shore and Moby, the Lobster Lift, the second Subsea Sonic, and Edge Tech. So we're very fortunate to actually get to test out a variety of gear. The other important part of this project is the virtual gear marking. And I do want to call out Virgil Zetterlund with Conserve.io because he's played a huge role in this project and lending his expertise with software development. So you can see in this case, Untethered is a system we've been using, and this is allowing us to work with the other gear systems software and to better track and mark where our deployments are in retrieval. So again, huge aspect. The two main cycles, early, May and June, where we're actually just testing the gear out, can get people familiar with it, making sure that we've got safety measures in place. And then the second part, which is what we're currently doing, is actually testing this gear, both the different configurations for the pots, and also making sure that we're in compliance with all regulatory requirements from the exempted fishing permit. So as far as the permit, this is one of the roles I played. Kim and I and Captain Phillips applied for this, and so the permit's under my name, but basically showing, telling us where off the coast of Georgia we'd be doing these trials, what vessels we would be doing, and we'll be testing both the singles as they are traditionally used, as well as our experimental configuration, which is actually 4 pots combined together. And again, that virtual marking, gear marking will be utilized and eventually shared. Early in the spring, though, before we started familiarizing ourselves, we actually did a dock demo with fishery managers in Georgia and conservation partners. And this was a huge success because the feedback we had heard was a lot of them had heard about the gear, but had never actually seen it in practice. And, you know, during this time, too, Kim and some of her volunteers were able to complete 500 virtual deployments and over 180 dockside, boat, or pool deployments. So we got a lot of time built in there. And then come the summer and later in the fall, we continue doing training. This is where I actually got to play more of a role in learning the different systems. We ended up doing over 300 of these, and we really did repetition for proficiency's sake. We got a lot of work done out on the dock. We even went out into the Sound on one of the commercial boats just as a practice round, which was important. And then actually getting the gear ready for the deployments. A lot of these sea bass pots are fairly light, 10 pounds or so. So we actually had to get everything adjusted to make sure that we were meeting the specs for the ropeless gear systems. Even the lines that we were using, making sure that we were requested to do pink to make that stand out from some of the standard colors that these lines have. Adding weight to some of them. So a lot of our pots ended up being between 35 and 36 pounds. And you'll see the different zip ties. This was actually to denote different mesh size from the traps that were given to us. So this is why we had it cataloged. And then we finally actually did get out offshore off the coast of Georgia in mid-September. We had some mechanical issues with the vessel as well as the weather. But again, we were able to test out a variety of the gear types, which right now we have not started compiling the data. But this has been a learning process. And, you know, we've been keeping track of failure, so to speak, as much as the successes, because every time we've done that, it's been a learning process and an opportunity for us to troubleshoot. So in this case, you can see, you know, over 153 samples, we've had a 93% success rate. And so we actually have demonstrated the ability, you know, that learning process, which has been very helpful. Where we stand now, though, because of continuing mechanical failures with our vessels, we actually asked and got approved an amendment to our EFP. So currently, as I record this, Kim and her team are actually up in North Carolina working with some other fishermen that Captain Phillips helped connect us with to continue that, to make sure that we have the necessary field trials as outlined in the EFP. So this is actually going to move up the expiration date from October 31st to October 20th, which is the day of the consortium. And of course, I mentioned this earlier, but this project, simply put, would not happen without the volunteers. Julie, Joel, and Elena have been absolutely invaluable to this. Technical expertise, logistics, helping build equipment, and really becoming very proficient and advocates of the value of this gear. And then, of course, this also wouldn't happen without the actual ropeless system manufacturers, who were kind enough to actually lend us this equipment, and it's still being used. And trust me, we are putting it to the test. We're providing feedback. So hopefully it's a two-way learning exchange. And then, of course, you know, the agency and institutional support, NOAA Fisheries has been tremendous working with. Really, you know, they provide us, you know, questions. We try to give them input back to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But from the gear testing groups to the permitting piece, even presenting to the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council to get their input on this too. So we really do appreciate that. And Kim's advisor, Fluech, have also played invaluable support. And then, of course, finally, industry and community input. I mean, this is ultimately what we're trying to do. I mean, you know, having Charlie as a partner and the fishermen that we interact with, we really value, as we continue to test this, to get their input on ways that maybe they can be streamlined or suggestions. But just that practical institutional knowledge of being on the boat, helping us with lines, it's indispensable in a project like this. And hopefully we continue building those relationships and more importantly, trust. And again, continuing to get community involved. A lot of people are not aware of this, particularly down here in the South Atlantic. So it's a great opportunity for outreach as much as research. So I want to thank you for your time, and look forward to answering any questions, and have a good day.